This one slid on the news a little bit, but Volkanovski basically came out and said that before he fought Islam Makhachev, he was drinking every day on the couch. He was candid about his mental health issues. Did that affect into his performance? I would say almost certainly yes, it did. And I want to touch on this because I think it's an interesting conversation about fighters outside of camp. John Jones famously with his alleged cocaine-fueled binges and all that sort of stuff. So how are you holding that? Because from my perspective, you're fighting the 1 pound for pound guy is a Makhachev. You're drinking every single day. There's no way that doesn't affect your performance. And I loved seeing him in the first fight.
The first fight is one of those examples of a fight that you're so hyped to see.
Oh my gosh.
And then it delivers. What an amazing fight. I tell you what, I tape studied that fight over and over and over again.
Golden.
It is amazing. It's an absolute piece of MMA history right there. Do you know what I mean? You're talking absolute peak of the pound for pound rankings. Here's my incredibly hot take. Islam won in the first round because he was better technically. He did a really lovely game plan of test a head kick, body kick, body kick, body kick, body kick, head kick. Do you know what I mean? I just, when I'm watching how he won that fight, it wasn't like, you know, blah, 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 head kick. It was like, it was meticulously set up. It was clearly planned. You know what I mean? And in the first fight...
It was crisp, yeah.
In the first fight, like, what was Islam's game plan? To wrestle. Right? And then to come out and have a game plan specifically around striking, I think like that's an amazing technical 180 and saying, look, I am the pound for pound best and I'll show it to you because I'm not just going to out wrestle you in the first fight, which, you know, the truth is that's what won him the fight, the back control and all the rest of it. And then in the second fight, I'm going to beat you on the feet as well.
I mean, the second fight with Volkanovski and Islam Makhachev, it was the shot. He actually defended the head kick. It was just the fact that the glove was a little bit too low, so it bounced off and ricocheted off his head. The question is that a mistake you're less inclined to make if you're more prepared for a fight?
That's a good question.
For me, that feels like one of those, like, I mean, there's a million ways you can lose a fight, but that feels like one of the unlucky ways to lose it because he actually did expect the head kick. It's just that his hand placement was slightly low.
Yeah.
You could attribute that to reaction time and sharpness and the crispness in the gym that you may not be prepared for.
I see exactly what you're saying here, right? What you're saying is that had he been doing less of this, then he'd have been able to do this.
And more of this.
You know what I mean? His body's programmed to bring to mouth, not to bring to... Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but the thing about Volkanovski is like, he is like probably my favorite fighter at the moment because of his honesty, his fight anytime, anywhere mentality. And I love that he's been really honest about it. But my issue with the second fight is that I don't think we got to see Volkanovski's evolution and all the stuff that he improved because it finished in the first fight. I finished in the first round. I just think it was such a shame.
Yeah, I think when you get to that pound for pound where you're talking about like those finest of margins and those little millimeters and the difference between here and here, you know, I think, you know, short notice sucks for everybody. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think because the other thing is now, right, you're talking about like your average MMA fan, and your average MMA fan is like, Volkanovski got head kicked. Like, he's nowhere near his like Makhachev level. You know what I mean? He got head kicked. It's like, it's over, bro. This conversation's done. Do you know what I mean? And you can't fault them for that particular mindset. However, you know, like we know, fights play out differently all the time. Do you know? And so the thought process of the drinking beforehand, like, it's just no possible way that can benefit him. But on the flip side, it's you know, is he New Zealand or is he Australian?
I want to say, I don't know actually, one of the two, yeah.
Either way, Australian/New Zealander drinks a lot. It's not exactly like mainstream.
Yeah, that's not hitting the front page of the papers tomorrow, put it that way. Yep. But it's a tough one. But I actually don't think enough people appreciate that a fight happening 100 times has 100 spreads of outcomes. Yep. Like, a good example, McGregor-Aldo, finished with that left hook. He did practice that, but, you know, we could be living in that universe where that was like the one outcome out of like, maybe he still wins 70, 80 times out of 100. But like, it's so interesting in fighting how that's the rawness of the sport, which is you could be the dominant guy, but you can still lose pretty badly. Cool. And for the fan, like, you know, your family, your friends, the fan base, dude, they will turn on you so. And that's my least favorite part about the sport is how, like, when you're on the top, everyone loves you. The second you lose a fight, gosh, you know, Volkanovski, who we're talking about? Like, all of a sudden he's overrated. He never should have. I mean, it's just insane. Like, I don't mind people having opinions, but like, I just like to see people stick to those opinions over time and not change so much.
Everybody wants to back a winner, and I think we've talked about this before about how people tie their sense of identity to their support, whether it be a football team, whether it be a fighter or anything.
Yes.
We've talked about this, and when it comes to fighting, like you obviously you train, you know fighters, you've seen fighters. I've seen a lot of fighters, and like a lot of guys don't understand these are real people. These are people who I've had cry on my shoulder after they've finished their fights. These are people that I've carried out of the fucking cage. These are guys that I've made sure that I've stayed backstage with if they've got a head injury or anything else like this, to make sure that they don't pass out. These are guys that I've been around the sport for a long time. I have been in a hospital ward with Gunnar Nelson when I was working as a commissioner while he waits for brain scans. Do you know what I mean? I've been and see, and people don't see the sacrifice day to day. And the other thing that I'm just going to go off and around this grinds my gears like crazy.
Man. Get this man right? Pulpit, yeah.
I think the average person, like, you might have been punched in the face while you were drunk or something, but that's it, man. You don't know what an elbow feels like. You don't know what it feels like to be hit to the body and feel like, oh my God, I can't move and I've got to fight this guy. Do you know what I mean? You don't know the idea of like having your nose broken and you can't breathe and you're breathing blood down the back of your throat and you've got to answer the next round. And you also I can say from my own experience, like, in my last amateur fight, when I had to answer the bell for the second round, I was tired, and the guy was rangy, and his range, when I stood at the end of his range, was fucking terrifying, man. I was standing at the edge of his range, and I was like, this guy is a significantly better striker than me, and I could feel it, and he knows it, and I know it. Unfortunately, I got it to the ground and all the rest of it, but like, I was like, ugh.
But mentally, you had to overcome that challenge to get absolutely. That down, yeah.
So when it comes to sort of like this sort of like support flow and all the rest, I remember a fighter saying that like after my fight where I won, I had an unreal number of influx messages, like 500 missed voice notes and all the rest of it, and when I lost, I had a missed call from my mum. Do you know what I mean? And like, it's a tragedy when these guys are going out there. I know they're there to earn a paycheck, but they're there to put on an entertaining show for us, the fans.
True, and it's sort of nobody really cares about you that much. That's the reality of it, is when you go into it and stuff. But it kind of connects to this idea of what is the expectations of fighters outside of camp? So camps traditionally last like 8 to 12 weeks if you're doing it properly, you'd say.
Yeah, ideally.
Ideally, but and let's say you fight 3 times a year, so that's 36 weeks out. Let's cover how many weeks post-fight recovery? 2 weeks, should we say? You take depending if you're concussed, right?
Yeah.
So let's say that gives you if you're fighting 3 times a year, you've got 3 12-week camps. You're taking 2 weeks out after fight. You've basically got 12 to 14 weeks of the year to spend doing something. If you're an athlete, you're doing it full time. Now, what's the expectation? Now, if you're dedicating like 75% of your year to your job, you're gonna want to play hard, party hard, right? So I can see why fighters may want to say, well, dude, like, I've got a 12-week camp, I can burn. I mean, you can radicalize your physique in 12 weeks anyway, right? So I can see why fighters outside of camp are like, dude, yeah, I'll party, like. But are we getting to the point where to really win at the highest levels, did you still need to be improving and having like, how laser focused do you need to be in your off time? That's the $1 million question for me.
I think there's 2 sides to that question, which is first, like, how much improvement does a fighter need to make, and how much of the mental side of things, how much can a fighter, like John Jones is a perfect example of a guy who doesn't really, like, or self-admittedly that he didn't train that hard, that he was partying right the way up to the fight, but like mentally he's the GOAT, man. He, in his mind, there is no doubt that he is the best that's ever done this sport, and that's different when you walk in there to somebody who may have taken a bit of time off, maybe had a bit to drink and all the rest of it, gets called up for a short notice fight, and if somebody says to him, did you do everything you could have done to win this fight? They'll have to honestly say no, and that's something that you have to carry going in there. In fact, this is part of the reason, well, not the main reason, but part of the reason why I don't compete in MMA at all anymore, because I have enough things going on and a fight team to look after that I can't be the selfish and self-focused person that I need to be able to perform mentally at the level that I'd want to go and deal and take brain damage, man.
Yeah, because it's also like you're investing in training other people, you've got a business to run, you've got fighters that you're growing, and it's like, how can you do that and show up and do that if you're also competing a thing of yourself?
So to answer your question in terms of the off-season, you see a lot of fighters who are, I get a good example recently is a guy called Makwan Americani, sorry, and he is like pretty much the same fighter most times that he competes. He goes out there He's got a great first round in him. He's got a fantastic, I think it's a Darce choke. No, it's an Anaconda choke. He's got a fantastic Anaconda choke, loads of Anacondas on his record. But statistically, if he gets into the second round, that fight's over. You know what I mean? And he's almost always going to lose. And like, this is one of those where if you're training for a fight against him, Anaconda defense, get into the second round, statistically, you're going to win that fight now. Do you know what I mean? And so, like, actually, you're not going to expect him to come into the next fight with an incredible gas tank and with a whole barrage of different submissions. Like, he knows what he is. He knows what he's here to do. And you know, statistically, that works for him, you know?
Gotcha.
So the thing that I think is super important is, do you have a fighter who is an old dog that can't be taught new tricks, or do you have somebody with a growth mindset who says, actually, I'm going to reinvent myself every time? Quite similar to Islam Makhachev, who you know, he reinvented himself in between the Volkanovski fight and came out and won comprehensively on the feet, whereas before he was implementing a more wrestle-heavy game plan.
That's so interesting, because there's some fighters who say, dude, you're like a John Jones. In his stage career, I'd be like, I'm just more concerned about you showing up at the top of your performance than trying to teach John Jones new meta. Like, he's like the top, right? He's not exactly lacking in some of the skill sets and stuff. So that's an interesting philosophy, I think, as it gets more concentrated. But it's also like, when you're having fun, when you're training, you learn more and it sinks in a lot better. So there's going to be a lot of different coaches who sit around this table and tell you something different. Like, I say take the time off. Another guy might say use it to develop skills. If you want to do, like, you just 12 weeks on your boxing, your time to do whatever you want to. And I think it'll be interesting to get more data to see, actually, is there some commonality of how people spend their off season versus, because like some fighters, like Paddy says, doesn't he likes to eat when he's not fighting and he blows, but it seems to be working quite well for him at the moment. So it's interesting perspectives on it.
I think this would be an incredible topic to actually dig in deep to and actually spend an entire segment of this podcast discussing. I think that's something that I've got some pretty deep opinions on, and it's something that, you know, the variables within that are, are we talking an amateur fighter or a pro fighter? Are we talking end of career, beginning of career? Are we talking heavyweight? Are we talking, you know, flyweight? Are we, like, the variables within this make a big difference, right?
And it could also be the case that, yes, it does make a difference, but we're talking about like a 5% difference. In other words, eating protein at a certain time of day, like, it makes a difference, yes, but how much of a difference does it make? So,
are your fundamentals in place?
Yeah, exactly. Like, if you're not sleeping properly, like, solve that first and then come back and solve like your off-season training or something.